Are you seeking a sense of freedom, and do you know how to find that in the power of forgiveness? I'm Tina Yeager. I'm your host of Flourish-Meant today, and I have a wonderful friend and return guest in Eva Marie Everson. She is, if you don't know her name, the award-winning author of over 50 titles. She is CEO of Word Weavers International and the director of the Florida Christian Writers Conference, and she's also the recipient of the Yvonne Lehman Legacy Award and Lifetime Achievement Awards. Welcome, Eva. I am so excited to have a conversation with you today about the freedom of forgiveness.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a critical topic in my work and in my life, and I am so happy to be able to share it with your listeners.
Eva, let's talk about why we actually need to forgive. Many people are thinking, I just can't do it. I can't do it. I don't see the reason to. This person doesn't deserve forgiveness. They haven't asked for it. They never apologized. They never repented. Why should I give up that need to get justice, that resentment that is protecting my heart from this person who has so sorely hurt me?
Right. Well, there's a couple of things there. First of all, as Christians, we forgive first and foremost because Christ forgave us. And one of these little lines that's in the Lord's Prayer, it comes at the very, very end. Jesus also said that you would be forgiven in the same manner that you forgive. So we think it's okay for us to hold on to our hurts and our bitterness and our resentment. But as long as God doesn't hold on to the hurts and the bitterness and resentment against us. But there's an old saying that unforgiveness is the poison you pour for someone else, but drink yourself. So the bottom line is unforgiveness begins to eat you up. A lot of times the person who hurt you either doesn't know that they hurt you or they don't care that they hurt you. So you are not doing anything to them if you don't forgive them. I was watching another podcast and was so stunned by this that I began writing in the back of the book that I was reading on one of the blank pages. This spoke to me about the difference in forgiveness and reconciliation, because we have blended those two things together, thinking, well, if I forgive, then I have to have complete reconciliation with this person. And that's not what God is asking us to do. The reconciliation may come, but there are other things that will have to take place. The first step is that you forgive. So this man's name is J.J. Douglas, and this is what he said: forgiveness is an inside job. Reconciliation is contract. That's deciding you're safe and we can sit at the same table again. Reconciliation without proof is handing the keys to the thief and praying he won't steal again. Forgiveness is peace in me. Reconciliation is safety with you. One does not guarantee the other. So it was so powerful. I have to write that down. I had to run it back and write it down, because that, I think, is where we get confused. We think that forgiveness means a total and complete reconciliation without proof. I heard a man many years ago, probably 40 years ago, he had a prison ministry. He had been in prison and he found the Lord. And when he came out, he began a prison ministry, very powerful foot soldier for the Lord. He really was. But one of the things he said that absolutely stuck with me was this: if a man goes to prison for armed robbery and he accepts the Lord, and then he is released from prison and he begins to go to your church and he lets you know, I was in prison for armed robbery, you don't give him the collection plate and then ask him to count the money. That's just wisdom.
So there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I think that's one of the things that holds people back, is they misunderstand what forgiveness means. And I think there's a spiritual thing that is even deeper than understanding the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. It's understanding why we need to forgive in order to stay in close relationship with God. Forgiveness is respecting who God is and who we are not, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's that thing. This is what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to forgive as you have been forgiven. And the reason for that is that God knows human nature. He should. He created us. He knows that if we do not forgive and move on, and that's the big part of forgiveness, is letting it go. Just let it go. Leave it with God. I don't want to say get over it, because I mean there's some horrible things that happen, but to forgive someone means you have just freed yourself from the internal turmoil that will end up being external turmoil. You will show signs of this unforgiveness. You become bitter, and even your family members don't want to be around you because you're just angry all the time, and you wear that scowl on your face, and you're hard to beauty and the love that other people want to give you. You know, one of the things that I had to do several years ago, my husband and I went through a horrible hurt in our lives together. And it took me a minute to say, okay, I forgive. But once I did that, I asked God to help me focus not on what life had taken away, but what he had given me. So I could stop looking at this one bad thing that had happened and start looking at the blessings that were around me and begin to praise him for those things instead of wallowing in the why me, why us, you know, how dare she, how could she, and just every day that becoming a burden on my shoulders. And that's what unforgiveness does. It's so true. It is the poison we drink that we intended for somebody else. And they're getting along just fine. They don't even know, you know, they don't, like I said, either they don't know or they don't care.
Most people don't understand the dynamics of forgiveness where we are giving someone the authority over our well-being to determine whether we are okay or not instead of God. We are giving that authority to the wrong place, and we're choosing to trust in our own ability and authority and right to get justice instead of trusting God for justice. It's a spiritual dynamic of who we give authority to, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, you know, my uncle, who I absolutely adored, was murdered over 5 years ago. Trial still has not happened. So man-made justice has not fully occurred yet. The people who did it are in prison. It was a murder for hire, and they got the wrong house. And so my 88-year-old uncle is lying in bed, sound asleep, and these three people break in and just, you know, shoot him up, so to speak. And the initial horror was then replaced by anger. But I immediately knew, okay, we couldn't figure out how in the world it happened in this little tiny southern town that this 88-year-old man was broken in on in the middle of the night and shot and killed. It just made no sense. Nothing was stolen. He didn't have any enemies. It was like, this doesn't make any sense. But then once we found out it was a murder for hire, that immediate anger just rose up like, how dare you? How could you? And then I was like, okay, Lord, I'm going to let this run me, or am I going to give this to you? I immediately made a decision to forgive these people, everyone who was involved. I forgive you. And it goes way deeper than the three people that broke into the house. I forgive you. And I actually wrote it down. I forgive this one and this one and this one. I forgive them because you forgave me. And, you know, like the guy that had the prison ministry said in that same talk that I heard him give, he said, some people tell little white lies and some people rob liquor stores. And in God's eyes, it's all the same. And I thought, that's so true. I mean, if you think about it, that list of 10 commandments, those that are man against man, like murder and lying and adultery, etc. Listen, lying and coveting, which seems like pretty benign things compared to murder and adultery, but they're right up there with the top 10. So I forgave. And then I said, okay, Lord, now you go get them. So I can leave it with him. And even in the fact that we still haven't gone to trial, I said to my cousin, my uncle's son, I said to him recently, we're just going to leave this in God's hands because he knows the perfect time. He knows the perfect jury. He knows everything about this. It's going to be perfect. And we can just rest in that. Isn't that so much better than just being stirred up all the time? Yeah, it is.
I want to talk about this more and the full effects of unforgiveness versus forgiveness physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I know that you put some of this into the book, but I do want to give you a chance to talk about Miss Beth Betancourt briefly and how you incorporated the story of forgiveness, the concept of forgiveness into this book and where people can find it and follow you.
You know what really hurts more than being wounded by someone you don't know is being wounded by someone you do know, like family. Family's supposed to be a safe place. And I understand that all too well because, again, what my husband and I have gone through, not once actually, but twice within our marriage, almost 50 years now, 47 years of marriage. Twice we have had family who turned on us in two opposite situations, not the same family even. We had to learn to forgive in order to move forward. And then we started watching God bless us as we continued to walk out that forgiveness. So I began to see this pattern. And because I know I have been forgiven so much by God, again, it is such a pertinent issue for me. I am more than a nonfiction writer. I'm a fiction writer. That's just who I am. So I want to incorporate these truths into my stories. Beth Betancourt is a woman in 1962 who's 28 years old, who has been estranged from her identical twin sister for 7 or 8 years when her sister suddenly dies. She is so angry that she has shut herself off from the rest of the world. So who did that punish, right? It only punished Beth. And at one point, realizing that she will never have the opportunity to make anything right with her sister now, because she never forgave her. And even though she continued going to church and being a pillar of the society, inside she was just boiling constantly. She can forgive, she can offer, say, okay, I forgive her, and that's between her and God. But there's never going to be an opportunity for reconciliation, full reconciliation with her identical twin sister. Then I have this other character named Marty, and Marty is a young man that comes into Beth's life who has every reason to be angry. He suffered child abuse and alcohol abuse and just, rejection by his biological family. And he has every reason to be angry, but he has turned that all over to God. And he walks in this, not perfection at all, but he walks in the peace that comes from forgiveness. And he begins to, introduce that to Beth in a way that she has never had it introduced to her before. But there was a particular scene where it all kind of boils to a head for her. And that was a hard scene for me to write because I had to dip back into the emotions that I felt toward these family members who had so crushed us. Even though it was like 30 years ago, I had to go back and find that emotion in order to write it. And I found that once that was done and I had gotten through that scene, that I had to go back to God and say, okay, now we need to revisit the whole forgiveness thing again. And just let me just say it one more time. I choose to forgive. I choose to forgive him and her and him and her, and walk in your spirit and in your grace and in your mercy, because what they did to me is nothing compared to what my sin did to your son. And then I was able to settle that again and keep going. But what I'm hoping that people will read between those lines is not just a good story, because I think it is a good story, but that what happens once Beth learns to forgive is how things begin to then peel off in her life, that old anger, that old bitterness, that old resentment. And now love can come in, and happiness and joy and peace replaces all of that. It's like, dark and light can't live in the same room. Same thing. God's peace and joy and grace and mercy cannot live in the same heart as bitterness and anger and resentment. Can't. Just can't. Because the dark will swallow the light unless you allow the light to swallow the dark.
And people can find Miss Beth Betancourt as of May 12th on any of the platforms where they would normally buy books, or at your website, which is where?
It's Eva Marie Everson author.com. And even right now, you can find Miss Beth Betancourt at all those places. You can pre-order, which means you'll get the pre-order price, which will be lower than the regular price. And I'm just so excited about it. It's a story that I've wanted to tell for 40 years. 40 years ago, this idea came to me, but I wasn't a writer at that time. And I just kept toying with it and playing with it. And I think God had to get me to a certain place before I was able to really understand the power of forgiveness.
I hope that all of you listening have the power now to take your first step to choose forgiveness and set yourself free. And of course, I also hope that you will come back for the next episode of Flourish-Meant.